in Zoom, and you no longer have a camera. So if you are leaving the room, if anything is going on that might be untoward, please stop the video, and that way that will result in you not being thrown out of the meeting. And again, John will talk about some of the security as well. Just admitting a few more people. More people are pouring in, so we're going to give them a few seconds to 7 people are waiting. Wow. Okay, we will give it 2 more minutes. And then we will get started because we have a great program scheduled for tonight. And raise your expectations so all the pressure is on our presenters. We are live here, and we will be live. We are now live on YouTube. So through the council's YouTube site, we are live. So again, a good reason to use your stop video option if you need to. If you'd like, we're more than happy to see your happy smiling faces. For those of us who are presenting, it's much easier to present when you have an audience, when you have a class on the school side. So we're very happy if you're paying attention, so that's good. So I'm going to welcome folks tonight. It is 8:03, and we'd like to get started because we do things on time. I'm Stephen Brown. I am the District Commissioner for Lenape Trail District, and have assumed the role of the greeter for tonight, at least. I will introduce Curtis Miller in 30 seconds or so to welcome everybody. But again, I'll just go through the basics. You've come in mute. If you do not want to appear on screen, take advantage of the stop video, the camera, an old-fashioned looking camera on the lower part of your screen. If you have questions, if questions come up during the course of the time, please send your chat. You can send your questions directly to me. I'm Stephen Brown, co-host. You can send them to Chris Clark, who is our host, or you can send them to everyone. And if you, yes, so I'm going to leave it at that. This is a Scout meeting. So I'm reminding you, as I remind people at the beginning of all Scout meetings about the Scout Oath and Scout Law, we are not going to say them as a group. Troops and packs and crews have tried that. And due to delays and processing speeds, it becomes rather exciting. We actually had a campfire the other night and we tried singing. That didn't work so well. Now I'd like to introduce Curtis Miller, who is our host for the evening.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for participating tonight. Introducing myself, my name is Curtis Miller, and I'm the Field Director for Northern New Jersey Council. And welcome, as we are excited here to have our first council-wide virtual roundtable. So thank you, everyone, for participating. A couple of quick items, and then I'm going to do some quick introductions before we get into tonight's program. As I shadow Stephen's comments, is that during the duration of the presentation, everyone is going to be muted. I want to direct you to the chat. So if you look at your bottom of the screen, if you have a question, you would click the chat button and type your question inside the little box here. And then at the end, we'll filter the questions and then we'll be able to answer as most as possible. So we have some of our team members who's going to filter out some questions. Some people may ask us the same question, so we'll make sure that we filter them out. The other thing also too, just some housekeeping etiquette items. Please make sure, as Stephen mentioned, that we all are scouts. So, if you're typing a question into the chat, please make sure that your questions are legible and we are able to accurately read. Also, just to introduce a couple of key folks that were able to help us put this presentation together tonight. We're also I'm going to do that in a second, but just to let you know, we have 2 other council-wide roundtables coming up. We have one next week where tonight we're going to be primarily focused on how to run a virtual meeting. Next Tuesday, we're going to be focusing on how to run a den meeting, and then next Thursday, we're going to talk a little bit about parental involvement and activities that could be done virtually. So we have a series of these roundtables. Hopefully that you find this information resourceful, that you can take back to your units and be able to utilize some of this information so you can continue on the scouting program. What I would like to do at this moment is introduce a couple of folks. If I call your name, just put a thumbs up next to your profile picture here. I would like to introduce our council commissioner, Mr. Walter Korlick. Walter, say hi to everyone. I would also like to introduce our district commissioner for Three Rivers District, Mr. Barry Goldman, who's also a co-host as well. Barry, just put a thumbs up. There you go. I would like to introduce Stephen Brown, who is our district commissioner for Lenape Trail District. And I would like to introduce John Brain, who is our commissioner for Ramapo Valley District here in the Northern New Jersey Council, and also our facilitator and presenter for tonight. Kudos to him. On the professional side of the house, I would like to introduce Ms. Rosa Urania, who is our director of field service here in Northern New Jersey Council. She's here also as well. I would like to introduce District Director Chris Clark, who is the District Director for Lenape Trail District, and Jessica Fajardo, formerly District Executive in Three Rivers District, and now our Exploring Director here in Northern New Jersey Council. So thanks, that's our professional staff and a volunteer base, and a couple of other people help us put this together. At this time, I would like to turn it back to Stephen Brown for a couple of council-wide announcements, and then we will turn it over to our presenter, Mr. John Brain. Thank you, everyone.
So I get to remind people, the vast majority, almost all of our units in council have rechartered. Chartering is important. Chartering is what keeps your insurance. Chartering is what keeps you being a legitimate scout organization. The partnership between you, your chartering organization, and Scouts, the Boy Scouts of America. Please get your charters in as soon as possible. If they're missing information, contact your commissioners, contact your professionals in the district. We'd like to get all of that wrapped up. If your charter truly expires, that becomes a big problem in terms of rechartering. Lots of paperwork on your part, lots of paperwork on the professionals' part in council, and we'd rather not take you there. So please don't ignore us as we're reaching out to recharter. That becomes important. The districts are having virtual roundtables as well. We've had successful virtual roundtables. Roundtables generally are scheduled the second Tuesday of every month. We will continue that. Lenape Trail District has held interim roundtables as well to give people the opportunity to see one another, talk, and share. Please reach out to your commissioners, your unit commissioners, assistant district commissioners, or professional staff. The goal for tonight and our next two council-wide roundtables are indeed to help units become more comfortable with the tools. We're modeling the tools. We're modeling one of them, Zoom, tonight. And we want you to become comfortable with the tools. Reach out to us so we can help. Finally, popcorn. You should have been receiving emails from council and from the districts on popcorn. Please respond to those. April 30th is the deadline for the first round of incentives. There are people looking for the YouTube link. It has just been posted. Thank you. I now would like to introduce the Ramapo Valley District Commissioner, John Brain.
Well, thank you, Steve, and good evening, everybody. So, as Curtis had mentioned, this is our first of a series of council-wide roundtables, and the focus is going to be on virtual meetings. Since we've all been in our current environment, I'm sure many units are challenged in maintaining a vibrant and active program amidst some really some difficult times that we're faced with. So some of the questions that some of the questions that have been posed to a lot of our council commissioners and the professional staff is a lot of units had questions on how to run a virtual meeting or what that would look like. So tonight we're gonna give ourselves a little presentation here. I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a moment. We're going to call it my presentation here. Is we're really going to discuss is how to really plan and run a virtual meeting. That's really what we're going to discuss tonight. A lot of units, maybe don't have the knowledge or skill sets, or they're just not familiar with a common platform that's used in businesses and seems to be lately in society overall. Is how to run a virtual meeting, and also how to make it fun and exciting for our scouts. So we're gonna dive right in. So like both Steve and Curtis had mentioned, if you want, you could post the questions to the chat group, and then we'll answer these at the end of the presentation. Okay. So what we're going to cover tonight is we're going to cover 5 basic topics. We're going to cover what is a virtual meeting. We're going to talk about what available meeting platforms are available to units today. There are some that council or that national does suggest that we use, and there's several that you should be wary about using, or council or national really prefers not to use these types of platforms out there. We're going to talk a little bit about planning and preparing for a meeting. So that's one of our key, will be one of our key topics tonight is how do you plan and prepare for the meeting? And this would go both for any type of unit meeting, whether it be a den, it could be a cub pack, it also could be a troop or a crew or a ship. So again, we've got different types of groups of youth, and they have different ages, and they all do require slightly different planning and preparing, just as you would as a regular face-to-face traditional type meeting. We'll do some best practices. We'll review some best practices that some of the units actually are using. So again, we'll talk about some troops that are out there, or units, since they just say troops, but also packs and dens are using them as well. And then we'll give you a list of resources that could be that you could use and that are out there for everybody. Okay, so first off, what is a virtual meeting? Okay, so I just went in, I just kind of Googled, okay, what does Google say it is? So a virtual meeting is when really people around the world, in our case, around our council, regardless of their location, use a video or audio or a text to link up online. Virtual meetings allow people to share information and data in real time without being physically located together. And of course, with today's environment, and it's important that we all remain healthy and safe in our homes. This is going to be, probably what our programs will look like for at least the immediate future. We all want to get back to being out in the outdoors. And, but again, this is really what a virtual meeting is. In fact, you're all participating in one this evening as well. Okay, so what are some of the available meeting platforms out there? So, many of us who work in business and education or academia, we use all kinds of platforms. What some of the preferred platforms that national and our local council, a lot of units are using is you want to use business-oriented type conference platforms such as WebEx, Zoom, which is the one we're using tonight, Skype, Google. There are several different types of Google platforms that could be used. These are the preferred kind. And the reason why is they do provide some security, they provide some privacy features, and they also have some more user-friendly terms and conditions for scouting, our scouting organization. Social media oriented platforms are really not recommended, such as Discord, Roblox, Twitch, Twitter, things of that nature. They're really not intended. They're not really intended for these types of virtual meetings. They're more, one-on-one texting or one-on-one type of interaction, which again, as we know in scouting, you need to always follow our BSA youth protection guidelines. When you're trying to look at these available meeting platforms, always try to review their terms and conditions, their safety and privacy features, their data collection policies. One thing that you might not be aware is that many of these, especially the social media type platforms, they actually record and collect data, and then they use it for their own businesses to find more people, or all of a sudden you'll get like those spam emails or spam notifications and stuff. They come from the data collection that some of these social media oriented type platforms are collecting. You don't get those with the more business type platforms. And one thing you also need to do is whatever platform you're using, or looking at using, make sure it's aligned with our BSA digital privacy guidelines and social media's guidelines, I should say. And down there's a link at the bottom of the presentation. And it's actually, if you go to scoutwire.org, there's a nice guideline little pamphlet that really gives a leader and also youth leaders in a troop or crew setting what some of the social media and digital guidelines that we really need to follow as we go about not only just using, say, video or these virtual type platforms, but also things like texting, group emails. It covers the whole kind of the whole gambit there. Oops, sorry about that. Went too far. So these are some examples of meeting platforms, and this is a document. You can actually go into the national website, and they actually have this. You go to the scouting. There's a virtual scouting part. I'll give you that shortly. There's a link to that, and you can actually download this document. So these are some of the 5 main, if you want to call it, or the preferred meeting platforms that a lot of units are using. Again, you notice they're actually all business based. And this just gives you a quick chart of what you're looking at. So for example, WebEx is, many years ago, that's a lot of, actually even still today, a lot of businesses, it's more of a business type platform for not only just video conferencing, but also for, presentations, online learning type stuff. They'll use a WebEx type platform. Zoom, that's one we're using. Free conference call, there's a lot of, that's one that's been out there for a long time. Skype, and then Google Hangouts. Myself personally, on my own troop, we use Zoom for our unit meetings that we hold once a week. But I've used, for everybody that may know me, I've been the NYLT Scoutmaster for several years, and we use Google Hangouts as part of staff development and things of that nature over the years. So these are all really great meeting platforms to use. One thing to keep in mind is some of these you'll notice here is they do limit the amount of participants. These are more of the free, if you want to call it, these are the free options that are available. And one thing if you're looking for larger groups to meet and stuff, you may have to look at purchasing a larger type of platform. Normally the fees aren't too bad, and they're normally charged like on a month-by-month basis. So I'm just going to quickly go through the Zoom platform. That seems to be the platform of choice of late, along with many units are using it. I know we're using it. I think council-wide, as you're on this now, every district now runs their roundtables virtually through Zoom. So that's the platform which is really taken hold in this whole current environment. So what we've got here is I just there's 3 basic plans that are available. One is the free one, and as you can see here, it hosts up to about 100 people. The one limitation is only good for 40 minutes. So, if you want to do a quick meeting, if you're doing like maybe a den meeting or maybe, more like in geared to like a den meeting or a patrol meeting, this may be perfect for you to a platform for you to use, because it's short. Maybe your meetings are going to be shorter. You're not going to have more than, say, 10 to 15 people in the meeting. So it gives you some really, for not having any cost to it, gives you some really nice benefits. The next step up is a pro. This is kind of what we're using this evening. It does limit you to about 100, limits you 100 people. But the thing is, you can actually have a meeting that goes up to 24 hours. So it gives you really almost unlimited time frame. We're going to go into it. I'm going to go in my next slide. We're going to cover a little bit more with some of the features that these platforms have. And then up on the high end is there's the business one for basically $20 a month, and you can get up to 300 participants on that. And then again, it just keeps getting, more and more. They keep on adding more and more features. So again, as I mentioned earlier, look at the platform that you would like to use and do a little bit of research on it, because not every platform works for every particular situation or unit or type of meeting that you have. Just some of the features of Zoom. So this is the one that we're using now. This is the we'll go back here a second. This is the Pro platform we're using, great for smaller groups. You'll see here that some of the video conferencing features is you have a video and you have voice, and you can add virtual backgrounds. You can share your screen, which is great. You may want to tie in videos. You may want, there's what we call a whiteboard, where maybe you want people to share ideas. They can actually share their computer with the group. So it does offer some nice benefits for small group meetings. We also have the web conferencing features. It gives you, basically different desktop application sharing. So what you're viewing here is actually that particular sharing through my presentation. The one thing that we'll cover a little bit more is the personal room and meeting ID. As you noticed tonight, when you actually came in, you actually had to enter our room. If you didn't have the direct link, you actually had to enter the room number and a meeting ID. This is really comes back to that security and privacy that we're always concerned about within scouting. So, that's a great feature to have, because you just can't people come in automatically. You actually monitor, just like Steve is doing now with the group, is he actually lets people into the room, and a great way to control who's coming in. That way you don't get unwanted visitors, because you never know who out there may get your password and ID through an email that may have been inadvertently sent out, or maybe something through a Facebook or another type of social media posting that someone may have had, and they can kind of get in. You can schedule meetings. So not only could you have a single meeting, you can actually have a reoccurring meeting, such as we're doing with this particular session of virtual council roundtables. And what's also too is what's nice is you've got host controls, and you can also raise your hand. I saw as we're sitting here, I see people, a notification that pops up and says, "Hey, I got a question," which which is great, because in large groups you might not see everybody's picture in the background, and you might see somebody pop up and has a question. So it's a good way to see what's going on. And then there's group collaboration features. You can have what Zoom is, and I know my own home unit uses this. We have breakout rooms. So when each patrol goes off for 15 or 20 minutes to work on a patrol item, they break out. We have separate breakout rooms for that. So it's a great idea. Maybe if you have a pack meeting and you want to break up by dens, you could set up breakout rooms for each den, where they could do their own thing for a short period of time before coming back to the larger group. Let's see here. There's just other features. One, whiteboarding, I mentioned earlier. That's like a whiteboard which you would have in a classroom, and you can share ideas with your participants on that particular meeting. Okay, planning and preparing for the meeting. So once you've looked at and decided what platform you want to use, the nuts and bolts of really running a virtual meeting is, okay, well, how do we plan and prepare? So some of the things you should always consider is the time of day, length of the meeting, your preferred meeting tool, which is probably one of the initial things you should look at, theme of the meeting. Not much different than, as you see here, it's not much different than you would planning your own really face-to-face meeting like we've traditionally had. You want to think about the structure of the meeting. We want to make sure that we follow BSA-wide youth protection standards. And then this is a pretty important part when it comes to really all meetings, but I think in today's environment and using the virtual meeting, is feedback after the meeting is done is important. So we're going to touch base on a couple of key items for each one of these topics. So time of day. So some things you need to consider. Be aware of school times. Just we might, since a lot of us or many of us are working from home, we can say, hey, fine, I got my den meeting now, like, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Doesn't interfere with everybody with, with dinner time, or might be a good time in the afternoon, just as an example. Well, maybe your scouts are actually having school at that time, because a lot of schools are now using virtual platforms as well, and you may interrupt their school time. So be aware of when you want to plan these meetings, and just be aware of your time of their school. Consider the age of your scouts. Your younger scouts, like tigers and wolves and lions. You might want to do that, maybe them earlier in the morning, where they're more wide awake and they have some more energy. Maybe you can try to burn some energy off. If you're working with a troop, with Scouts BSA or a crew, you might want to gear maybe towards the evening hours after they're done with school. That's more inclined to maybe when their regular meeting hours are. Weekends. Now that many of us are, unfortunately cannot go out and enjoy the outdoors like we normally would like to with our units. You can consider maybe a weekend meeting. It might not be obtrusive to a family or your particular scouts. But also, one of the key things to keep in mind is be consistent with the time and day once you start it. One of the killers of a virtual meeting is they bounce around. Like maybe one day you decide to run it on a Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and then you realize, oh, that doesn't work, and you try to change it to a Wednesday at 1, or you get maybe some parents or some other scouts saying, I can't do that. You start bouncing around. Now you're not becoming consistent, and you can wind up losing scouts. So that's one thing you just kind of have to be aware of as well. Length of the meeting. So these are just some examples and maybe some suggestions for length of a meeting. Pretty much probably close to what you're doing already with your, with our traditional meetings or face-to-face meetings. You probably don't want to go more than 30 minutes for tigers and wolves. 45 minutes would be maybe for bears, weebles, and arrow light, and definitely 60 minutes probably tops for a scout BSA or a crew meeting. One thing you always want to do is always keep that meeting moving. Beware of awkward silence. Normally, unlike our case tonight evening, where we have you muted because we're going to have the questions and answers afterwards. Here you're probably going to have discussions of one-on-one, so they'll be open and you'll be able to hear them talk. Be aware of the awkward silence. If you all of a sudden hear silence, you might need to step in and maybe try to sing a song or some sort of activity, or maybe show a YouTube or a video of some sort. Be aware of that silence, because you're going to start probably losing your scouts' attention at that point. Try to maybe tie in a pre or post meeting activity. I've seen a lot of great stuff posted recently on one of our new Facebook pages, but also seen a lot of stuff posted on national and our district and our council web pages. A lot of units are doing pre or post meeting activities. Like, for example, if your den is working on some sort of outdoor activity, maybe you send a communication out to your parents and your scouts saying, before the meeting, go out and collect 5 leaves and let's compare them when we all get on the meeting. So again, try to tie in some piece pre and post. That way you're working around some sort of theme. And always give yourself 5 or 10 minutes for an opening and closing. One thing always keep in mind, it is a scout meeting, and we should try, even though we're doing this virtually, we should try to maintain what they're used to. So always do the flag raising, always do your, if your unit does the scout oath and law or does the outdoor code, whatever you're used to doing, try to maintain that, because then that gives a sense of continuity between the traditional meeting. The traditional meeting setting as compared to our new now virtual meetings. Okay, so preferred meeting platform. We covered a little bit of this earlier. Choose one platform and stick with it. One thing that your scouts probably won't. You won't hear this from your scouts, but you'll definitely probably hear it from their parents. No one likes to start with one thing and then they change. So once you choose a platform, just kind of try to stick with it. If you find out that it doesn't work, it's okay to switch. It's not a problem, but try to stick with it for a little while before you make a change. One good way is, since a lot of these platforms give you trial versions, try out a couple before you start. Maybe try a simple little meeting or a conference call with your parents or maybe other leaders, or maybe your pack committee or your troop committee or your crew committee, however you guys want to do it. Try out a couple, try out the tools, just to give you an example, just prior to this, just prior to our roundtable tonight, us volunteers and professionals, we were playing around with the tools to making sure that everything worked out. So when we started the meeting tonight, it worked and it would flow for you. Again, like I said earlier, you can utilize your trial versions first, and also select one that works best for you and your scouts. Like I said earlier, there's several out there. So not all of them work for everybody. Find the one that works for you guys the best. Again, like we said, practice it before you run the meeting. Don't go in cold. The worst thing you could do is, hey, I got this platform ready to go, and you think you're all good to go. You got your plan together for your meeting, and the first time you're using it is that first meeting, and all of a sudden people aren't signing in right. You're locking people out. You're turning people off. You're turning like their sound off or a video off. Get that kind of like gets a little. It gets a little clunky, if you want to call it, and then then your scouts kind of notice that, where you'd be surprised how much a scout recognizes or sees and understands. Even the youngest scouts down in the Tigers and Lions pick up on some of that too. So just practice before you start, and then solicit feedback from your scouts and your parents when choosing it. Maybe some of your parents, maybe in your unit, have used certain ones for work, and there's one thing you could leverage as well. Maybe some of their platforms that they use at their offices with their companies, they may be able to help you and use those platforms, or some new ones that might be out there. So look at that as well. They can actually provide probably some feedback on when choosing it too. Scouts our youth are used to using like the Google. Since Google's used in a lot of schools, are used to the Google platform, so they may want to gear towards that. Also, keep in mind, part of that too is figure out your age. The younger scouts, you're probably going to be geared more to the parents using the platform, where if you're dealing with scouts BSA units or crews, the youth are probably going to be using the platforms and not so much their parents. So again, you want to look at that platform based on who the user is going to be as well. Meeting theme, just as we run all our meetings this way, or at least we try to run them this way. Make sure you have a meeting theme for every single meeting that you guys put together. Try to make it, again, fun and exciting. One of the pitfalls is, many of our scouts are now doing or using this virtual meeting type or virtual platforms at school. So the last thing we want to do is turn our den meeting or our troop meeting or our crew meeting just like school that they just got done with maybe 30 minutes, 60 minutes ago. Again, try to make that break from them. Look at the scout handbooks and try to modify the some of the meeting ideas that you may find in our handbooks or in scouting resources, such as troop meeting or den meeting guides and things of that nature. So just spend a little bit of time, take a look at maybe what you want your theme for your series of den or troop or crew meetings, and try to look at where you can modify that particular program. Use your resources. That's not just handbooks and the different online documents you could use. Talk to other unit leaders. Talk to other people you may know. I'm going to share some resources later on, which are great. Places where you can share ideas or ask for help. Talk to your unit commissioners or your district commissioners or your council professionals. We can give their resources for you as well on some of this. One thing that we're all concerned about right now is a lot of our kids and our youth are actually stuck inside, and they're stuck inside either doing schoolwork. They can't go out and they can't be with their friends as much as we'd like them to, or much as they'd like to. So try to maybe tie in some sort of physical activity outside that they can do with their parents. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe have, maybe on a cub level, maybe have them go out to a scavenger hunt in their yard and come up and look for, different types of rocks, and they get to share them. Maybe with a troop level or scouts BSA level, maybe have them go out and demonstrate how to start a campfire, and then they can maybe take a video and bring it back, and they can show the troop on how they do it. So again, there's a lot of things that you can think about, but it does require us as leaders to kind of put that thinking cap on to think a little bit outside the box. One thing I know, this is what I know a lot of our troop has been doing for their meetings, is they add YouTube videos or videos that some of the scouts had put together to share, to teach, that they use for teaching, maybe a skill or something. It's a great thing. It's, my one troop meeting, they actually had a YouTube video, and the woman that was presenting it was showing them how to use a backpacking stove. And it was great. It was short, about 10 minutes, and they used that as the teaching part of the meeting. So again, utilize it. YouTube is a great resource for us all for really virtual or sharing of digital in digital media. And online skill games. There's a bunch out there. I don't have a bunch of them. I know there's a bunch out there. I forget some of their names, but again, some are hooked into Zoom. Do some research. There's online skill games that the youth can do off to the side and then come back and actually keep score. There was one like a scribble pad that our guys were doing. In fact, I think for my troop meeting this week, they're actually going to do Pictionary using the whiteboard feature within Zoom. So that's what, again, is sometimes you might want to think a little bit out of the, again, we got to think a little bit out of the box. Okay, structure of the meeting. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, you want to maintain your format that's consistent with your regular troop meetings or your pack meetings or your den meetings. Try to keep with what they're actually using. That way, it doesn't, even though we're in a new environment where they're home, they're with their parents, it's maybe a little restrictive or constrictive with that they're feeling right now. If we try to be consistent with our meetings, and that could be the same meeting times, the same program, like I mentioned earlier, closings, openings, things of that nature. Try to maintain that format. That way they're consistent and they're really used to it. Again, like I said, try to make it not school-like, try to make it fun. And this is key too, because I've seen this go both ways. Wear your uniforms. Just because we're virtual doesn't mean we have to sit there in our our bathrobe and slippers, right? Bunny slippers. Wear your uniforms. Many of us tonight actually are wearing our uniforms because it is a meeting, and it sets that consistency that the youth are probably familiar with. Always have an opening and closing, and then also to build some time in to allow your scouts to chat amongst themselves. Remember, our youth, the youth in your unit are probably they're probably bored. They don't get to see their friends. They don't get to hang out, but this actually gives them a forum that they can actually kind of hang out and chat. So build in a little bit of time, maybe 10 minutes or so at the end or at the beginning of the meeting, however you would like to structure that, but allows them to kind of be themselves and, and try to keep that social interaction with each other. Okay, BSA youth protection standards. That's one thing we always have to keep in mind. I just kind of watching some of the comments popping up here in the chat, and there were some things about registered adults for virtual meetings. So our BSA policies still apply for virtual meetings. So it's still 2 deep leadership. So that's 2 21-year-old registered leaders that have their youth protection trained, and they're trained in their position specific that they hold. So again, that still does apply. Just because we've entered a whole virtual world, BSA standards still do apply. A good procedure and a good best practice is the 2 leaders should log in. Whoever's going to be running the meeting and facilitating the meeting, they always should log in at least 10 minutes before they start the meeting. You might want to ask the question, well, why are we doing that? Why do you want to log in early? One is you want to be there before the scouts come in, especially more on the troop and crew level. The scouts could come in, and we always need to be, mindful of what their discussions are. We always want it to be scout-like. Not to say that's what's going to happen, but again, we want to be there always when the scouts starting to come in. Also, too, it's a nice having you as your leaders welcome the scouts as they enter your particular meeting platform you're using. Parents always should be present with their scouts during a meeting. This is really, really key. And this comes, a lot of this that you're seeing here, it comes right from the BSA website and in the safety guidelines that we follow. So again, parents should be present, especially on the cub level. The cubs should be present, should be visible as best as we can while you're on the computer and doing the particular meeting. Don't record meetings. A lot of these, that's one thing you have to be very, very careful of. A lot of these meeting platforms, do allow you to record meetings. You don't want to do that. That's actually kind of goes against BSA policy with that, especially for youth. You're really not supposed to be recording youth in any type of event. So just keep in mind is in many cases, most people don't realize, but Zoom in some cases, depending on the how it's set up, it automatically starts recording your meetings. So you might need to look in and what do you call it? You might need to look into making sure they're turned off before any youth come on. Practice CyberChip. This is a perfect opportunity to work on CyberChip with your youth and getting them to do good, safe computer and online habits. Also take care of and protect your meeting from online predators. You may have heard terms called Zoom bombing, where somebody gets your link, they come in and they've been showing inappropriate photographs or inappropriate language on the whiteboard. The one way to protect that is to making sure that only the people that you know get invited and they have the password and ID, meeting ID to get in. So that's something that you should always consider when you're setting up a meeting. And then safeguard personal information. So very be careful, be very careful of sharing any type of personal information. One thing that you might not be aware, or some of these tools, is if we just actually, as the leaders before, we were just discussing, well, if we've recorded this, you would actually see everybody's names pop up on any chat or anything on the side. And there could be, and you'll see who's there. So you gotta be very careful of what you're doing and always safeguard our personal information. Okay, so feedback after the meeting. It's important to know how the meeting went. Feedback is, as I've always called it, feedback's a gift, and both positive and negative feedback. We want to see how the meeting went. We've all had those meetings, even in regular, in a regular meeting environment, in face-to-face, that this meeting went great, this one didn't go so well. It's going to happen in the virtual environment too, and unfortunately that's part of a meeting. So always solicit your feedback of how the meeting went, but not only do it from the parents, especially if you're working on the Cubs, if you're on the Cubs side, but if you're, ask those scouts for feedback. They're going to tell you exactly what they thought or how they thought the meeting went. And you could do that a couple of different ways. One I got here listed as roses, buds, and thorns. People that call it different things. It's if anybody's familiar on the NYLT side or the older scout leadership side, they call it start, stop, continue. So it's just a good way that you put together a small group, whether it be your scouts, maybe just be the parents, ask what went well, what could be improved, and what we kind of need to stop doing. And then also always keep an open mind to feedback. That's one thing for as a leader, we have to always keep in the back of our mind. We don't always see what we're doing. Sometimes we need somebody to tell us, hey, this really worked great job, or hey, I think we need to modify this because I watched the 3 scouts and on the screen, they started rolling their eyes about 2 minutes into your discussion about how to tie a timber hitch. Again, those are things that that you have to be aware of. And that leads to another point is have the parents involved in watching what you're doing, because they can be another set of eyes. Because if you're doing the presentation, or if your SPL or your older boys in a troop or crew setting are doing a presentation, they can actually, you as a leader could pay attention to what's going on by kind of watching what they're doing. And probably a little bit better than you would in your normal face-to-face meetings, because you kind of have a captured audience. Okay, some best practices, prepare. I can't say that enough. Be prepared for your meetings. Script out your meeting in advance. Write it down. Say, this is what I'm going to cover. Rehearse your script. No matter how well you think, maybe in regular meetings that you come off the cuff a little bit sometimes, which we all do. There's always a plan A, B, C, D, E, F. Sometimes you get out to, but on a virtual meeting, you kind of need to have a little bit better script and work and stick to it, and know your tools. Like I said, some of the fastest ways that you'll probably lose attention of your youth and your scouts is if you're fumbling with your tool. Maybe also too is if you're on the troop or crew side, maybe have one of your youth work with you. It's a great opportunity for a leadership position in your troop. It kind of expands that whole webmaster type position that exists there. Maybe rely on them, because in some cases, and I'll I'll be the first one to tell you, I know the boys in my troop probably are better at it than I am when it comes to some of these new tools. Always have effective communication to your scouts and their parents. You should always let them know when you're going to have your meetings. Generally, I'm sure all you as leaders do this probably just as a rule of thumb anyway, but let them know about the meetings well in advance. Given that these are now virtual meetings and you're doing stuff, a lot of people are finding it, hey, I can let somebody know 5 minutes from now I want to talk to them, but you can't really do that with a meeting. Again, it's just kind of, be considerate of others. I know my own personal experience with work lately is I've been on a lot of conference calls and business calls and Skype calls, and we use Teams at my office, and I'll get an email invite 5 minutes before it starts, and I'm in the middle of something else. So again, try to let your parents know or your scouts know in advance. Again, we just kind of talk on the same subject is schedule meetings at the same times as they were before all this happened, just to maintain that continuity, and then use whatever communication methods that you've already been using. So a lot of units use GroupMe, a lot of units use texting, or they use large group texting services, or they're doing it through Facebook, or they're doing it through emails. Maybe you're doing it through snail mail, who knows? But anyway, always use the same method of communication to the scouts and their parents that they're used to. There's no reason to change any of that with these types of meetings. One good practice is have an initial parent meeting. A lot of parents meetings don't know, or a lot of parents maybe aren't familiar with this type of meeting setup, or they don't know how you plan on running it. It's always good to have hold a parent meeting before you start. That way you can set the expectations, and that expectations also isn't just the expectations of what the parents or the youth may expect as part of the meeting. Those expectations would also be how to behave, what is the proper etiquette. Maybe you're going to need the parents to police, so to speak, their youth while they're on the meeting, especially with our younger scouts. So again, it's a great way to explain what you want to do, how you're going to go about it, and what are the expectations both of the youth and also of their parents. Again, you should try to do this at least 1 week prior to starting any virtual meetings with your scouts. The last one is got maintaining control of participants without stifling enthusiasm. You've got a lot of scouts out there that have got pent up energy. They want to do things. They're probably going to try to derail things in your program, possibly, as you're trying to do and run a virtual unit meeting. So again, try to develop, before you even do this, and this goes back to the bullet point above, try to develop a good communication and proper etiquette to the parents to try to limit your distractions and derailing on any meeting. Try to do that and lay that out to the parents, and then lay it out to the scouts. If you're working on a troop and crew level, have the SPLs or your crew, your crew presidents work on what you think the proper etiquette is, and then you as an adult probably will give them some guidance and maybe some suggestions as well. But again, just because we're in a virtual environment doesn't mean on a troop or crew setting that us adults start taking over. We still want the youth to run it. So let them come up with what is the proper etiquette and proper way to run a meeting and how they would see it. And again, rely on your parents to help out during the meetings. Okay, so some of the resources we have out there. We have the National Scouting at Home website. That's at scouting.org, Scouting at Home. It's a new one that went up about 3 weeks ago. There's a lot of great ideas, examples. It gives you links to a bunch of other resources you could use. New Jersey, our council has the NNJC Scouting at Home webpage. If you go to the NNJBC website, there's now a link that takes you to Scouting from Home. Again, it adds in not only resources and ideas, but also too is gives you links to things that our units in our council and our districts are doing. So it's some homegrown ideas. This was a new thing we just set up last week or a week and a half ago. We have a Facebook page. It's called Scouting from Home. So if you just type in NNJC Scouting from Home Facebook, you can actually, you can actually join this. This is a place where you as a leader can share ideas. It's mainly geared to adults, but it's where we're sharing ideas on different things that can be done or what different programs that national or other districts or other councils are running that you could potentially use as ideas. This was a brainchild of Leon Weiser, and he's actually the one that's actually running it. Just one thing with that particular Facebook page, that is one that you have to be accepted to. So you have to get, you can ask to be invited to that group. And one of the two things that are required to join that group is you have to be a current registered leader and that your youth protection is up to date, which we are checking. So that is it's not an open page, it's one that we let everybody in. And we have Brian on scouting. I'm sure we all get those emails from Brian on scouting, and he's been gearing a lot of his articles and communications to virtual type meetings. Okay, so that kind of wraps up our presentation. And there's a bunch of questions here, and I see our district commissioners have been responding to them rather quickly. But I don't know if there's anyone, any particular question, Steve, that you wanna bring up to the group and we can discuss it.
Indeed, I'll jump in, and John, if you can stop sharing your screen and we can see each other.
I'm going to do that right now.
This webinar, this webinar was designed to talk about some of the technology and talk about virtual scouting. A lot of the questions had to do with advancement. We will deal with some of them, and we'll ask our experts who are here as well. But I do want to stress, in terms of the answering of this, that youth protection applies. Youth protection applies. Youth protection now for the past 2 years has required 2 adults 21 or older in all of the settings with Scouts. This applies online as well. It could be a merit badge. It could be a parent. It could be another registered leader and a registered merit badge counselor, and we could do a whole session on merit badges, and probably should. If the patrols are having meetings, we're looking online for 2 deep adult leadership. The concern is bullying. The concern is what's going on. That's not as easy. Often a troop meeting or a crew meeting or a cub meeting, things can be observed more easily than online. So we are looking at 2 deep leadership. I'll come through. I did want to share, hang on, I'm going to share my screen for just a minute because I want to, no, it's not letting me. I will come back to that. There's a great resource online. It's through scouting.org. I put it up in the chat, the coronavirus COVID-19 FAQ. That is a great resource. It's been updated. It's updated actually very frequently. Not seeing what I want. And it goes into great detail on advancement. Hang on for a minute. Why am I? See, I should be able to do this. It's just letting me rename. So it's up here in the, toward the beginning at 8:16 p.m. It was the chat. It talks a lot about advancement. The goals for advancement are pretty much that we use the virtual tools, but try to provide as much of the experience as we can to our youth, whether they're Cubs, Scouts, Venturers, Explorers. So the BSA is suggesting some modifications in the FAQ, and you can certainly use those guidelines. Are there some things that can't be done virtually? Swim tests, not so much virtually, unless the parents are filming. This probably doesn't work in northern New Jersey. That's certainly this time of year. All the personal fitness, still Scouts can still do that. That doesn't need to be observed. That doesn't need to be demonstrated. If something needs to be demonstrated, and it can be demonstrated in front of you, and I was looking around, I don't have my rope because I've been demonstrating knots. That's fine. The Scouts can do it, can do things that way. There are great guidelines on this page, and as there are other questions, I will pull this page up, or if someone else could pull the page up, one of my other co-hosts or John, and maybe share the page. because that becomes useful as a resource. And again, it was last updated about 2 weeks ago. Oh, Barry's going to do it. Excellent.
Barry's got it. Okay.
Here we go. So this is the page. And it starts at the very beginning about in-person activities. As Barry scrolls down, you'll see advancement and how to track it for Cubs, how to track it for Scouts BSA, what is acceptable. If something requires a visit and the visit can be done virtually, it becomes at the judgment of the unit leader who's testing on that. If you come down even further, so there's Cub Scouts and Cub advancements, lots about Scouts BSA and venturing, the merit badges, Supernova, camping. So virtual camping is allowed. There was a question on virtual camping and camping nights for merit badges. That was not discussed. And we will get an answer back for that and send that answer out in the weekly council updates. Virtual camping is not thinking about camping, is not sitting camping or sitting here talking about camping. It's camping. And there are several units, at least in my district, who have had virtual campouts. They've done advancement campouts. There's a venture crew who, not this weekend, but next weekend, is going to miss the West Point camporee. So they're going to do a virtual camporee. There'll be far less mud than West Point because there just will be. But they'll be doing skills and they'll be doing challenges. And all of that is appropriate to virtual camping. It does not count, as Barry's just about to pull up, it will not count for the 15 hours, 15 nights for Order of the Arrow. OA elections will be happening virtually. Again, more questions that are coming up. The patrol meeting, again, we're looking for adults in those patrol meetings, 21 or older. Scoutmasters conferences, yes. So how do you conduct a Scoutmaster conference? Live, you do it within earshot of, or within eye observation, but not necessarily earshot of other adults. It may be that you have another adult on board. You certainly, again, youth protection is required, so you will have another adult. The other adult may be a presence that is just a name and not a function, but is listening, is paying attention. Youth protection is very important, has been, and we need to continue that virtually.
There's a question regarding merit badge counselors I saw posted here. So if you're working remotely or virtually with a merit badge counselor, if it still needs to be two, it can't be just a merit badge counselor by himself or herself. You can have the parent on as well. So the parent would have to be kind of in earshot or see what's going on during that meeting or that session that youth is working with a merit badge counselor.
Yeah, remember, for merit badges, there are a lot of there are councils, there are districts, there are for-profit and non-for-profit entities who are offering merit badges online. Remember the requirements of merit badges. The unit leader has to approve the merit badge and the merit badge counselor. Do they need a physical blue card? No, but the unit leader needs to approve that. Mm-hmm. Unit leaders who are on our call, take a look at what the Scout is looking to do. We were hearing on calls last week, commissioner calls, there are some councils that have merit badge classes for 1,000 people. That's really difficult. If you have to explain, if you have to demonstrate, if you have to show, if you have to discuss, that is probably not happening in terms of some of these merit badge courses. There are units who have approached merit badge counselors in the council and in the district and said, can you work with us? Yes, and many requirements can be done. We have a group doing photography and they're sharing, a group doing parts of environmental science and they're sharing observations, but all the other requirements have to be met. And the merit badge counselors can meet virtually. Again, youth protection is important there, but Scouts need to earn those merit badges. Boards of review. We've had Eagle boards of review in the council and in various districts virtually. You should contact your district advancement chair. District advancement chairs, 3 of them in 3 districts, are familiar with virtual boards of review. Same requirements. There's some detail on the Nationals page about Eagle boards of review. We encourage it for all the boards of review. As John said, for the meetings, the leaders should be in ahead of time. Generally, boards of review bring parents in ahead of time for Eagle, so they get to see the people who are in the board. Don't bring people in and out of the board afterwards of the board of review. Bring parents in at the end. For Eagle, usually it's to congratulate the parents, congratulate the youth in front of her parents or his parents. That's important. Chris, do you want to comment? I see you've responded on advancement and ordering badges and things like that. But could you comment more kind of verbally, orally?
Sure, Steve. You can submit your advancement report, through Scoutbook as normal. And if you go to scoutshop.org website, there's instructions on how to order your badges. And then someone will contact you for payment. So, and it'll be sent out through the National Distribution Center.
I will call on, oh, I have to unmute you. Okay, thank you, Barry, for sharing screen. Because now I want to, we're hitting 9 o'clock, so that's our hour. We actually started at 8:03, so we have 2 minutes left. Do you, Ian, you're running next week. I'm unmuting you now, maybe? Trying to unmute you. Could you just comment on some of the agenda for next week?
Well, next week, mainly going to focus on the how to run a DEN meeting, specifically, kind of apply what John just talked about towards more of the Cub Scouts specifically, and some of the ways to adapt the program for the Cubs.
So that is the 28th, same time, same channel, whether you're live on Zoom or you're live on YouTube.
Yep.
Curtis.
Am I? Oh, okay, I'm unmuted.
You're live.
So in closing, thank you everyone for participating in our first council-wide roundtable. We're really looking forward. Hopefully today was a good resource for you to take back to your units. I want to thank the Commissioner Corps and also our presenter, John Brain, for doing an excellent job at tonight's presentation. Once again, we at the Northern New Jersey Council want to make sure, given the current circumstance that we are in, that we provide you with the best resources moving forward. So I want to thank all of our commissioners and professional staff for helping us put this together. I want everyone to be safe. I hope wish your families well. We'll be back next Tuesday. Thank you, Ian, for that brief presentation. We're excited about that. And next Thursday, where another one of our unit commissioners, Trish Regan, is going to talk a little bit about parental involvement and how to engage parents in different activities we can do virtually with our Cub Scouts. So I want to thank all our volunteers for that. Also, too, we did stream this meeting via YouTube. So we'll make sure we send out the link to everyone, that if anything that you missed and you want to go back to the presentation, we'll make those resources available to you. And we'll also have that link and a copy and outline of John's presentation on our council website. You can go to www.nnjbsa.org. And without further ado, thank you everyone for participating, and we will see you next week. Thank you.